a baby whose dad named him Jesus. Because in that gift, in the gift of Jesus, there is promises that are kept. And in those promises, it means that no matter what is happening in life, there is care that is given. That we are cared for because there is love and forgiveness there for us that give us a hope for tomorrow. Today we continue in our look at the red letter Advent. And if you haven't been with us, we are looking at a devotional book put out by a pastor named Zach Zender. And as we do that, we've been having a Bible study in our sermons and kind of daily devotions that revolve around that. And Zach really looks at the Advent season through the lens of the words we kind of connect in with our candles, as well as looking at what it's like to experience online shopping, right? So we have looked at what hope and peace and how those kind of are central within this Advent season and the expectant waiting of Jesus coming and how he connects into our lives. And so we have a hope, and that hope brings us peace. And today we come to the odd-colored candle of joy. And if you're like me, every few years you have to kind of do a Google search to remember why joy is a different color. And it really is that this weekend kind of gears us towards the excitement of Advent and of Christmas coming. That in hope and peace, we kind of have that internal processing. But joy is this external, here we go, we're getting closer and there's excitement growing. And so as we look at joy and we look at the Advent season, I know that some of you probably have experiences like I've had in my life. And one of those is on Christmas Eve when I was in kindergarten, hopping on a plane from Frankfurt, Germany to Portland, Oregon to go to my grandfather's funeral. That not all of this season is filled with joy. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But before we get there, oftentimes we think of joy as a feeling, as being happy or merry, and that's a part of it. But there's a psychologist, Alan Shore, we talked about him a few weeks ago, and he really talks about joy being a sense that you are cared for and that you belong somewhere. And that if you have those two pieces in your life, you can have this sense of joy, sense that everything is okay and there is more to the story, right? And so as we think about joy, I want to have that kind of definition in mind because as we look at joy, sometimes it's really easy to discover. It's kind of like if you're going online and you find the perfect gift for someone and you know exactly who it's going to go to, and in that, you know that they are going to have a sense that they are cared for, they are heard, you know them, and a sense that they belong, that they're whatever group or whatever family it is that you're giving presents with, that they belong there and they have a place. And with that, you get a sense of joy for discovering it, but you also get a sense of joy for what it will be to give that gift as well. I think for a lot of us, there's a sense of joy discovered when we think about our walk with Jesus, that as we have seasons in life, there are times where we can really point back and say, yes, God was there and it was an awesome season, and that joy was really discovered in those moments. But I think something happens oftentimes as we look at that, and we sometimes forget that. But throughout the Bible, we see that God and the writers point us to joy time and time again. And Peter is one of those guys. And as he does it, he talks not about a joy that we feel, but a joy that we receive in Jesus. Because it's not that we see him, but we love him. It's not that we see him, but we know that he's there. And so we get this inexpressible and glorious joy from knowing that we are a part of his story, and that story continues on. And as we look at that story, we know that it does revolve around his birth and Christmas. But there's more to that story in his death and his resurrection as well, and those promises that we can look to that tell us that we're a part of his story and a part of that family that we find belonging to. And in all of that, there are times where we find ourselves in transit, in waiting, where we don't necessarily see the full picture, right? Because if you're like me, you've probably ordered something off of Amazon and you've been eager to get it, but then it gets delayed. There's roadblocks and there's obstacles and things have happened that make it so it doesn't come on time. That's life as well, right? We have all of the good intentions to hold on to what the promises that God has had, but we find ourselves hitting roadblocks or stumbling here or there. It may be just a sense of like, where's all of this going? It might be that we put idols in our lives like video games or binge watching TV. It may be that work comes before everything else. But in seasons, there's these things that we come up against. And those stumbling blocks, those roadblocks, obstacles, may hamper us in that feeling of joy. And I think there's a clip from a movie that really captures this. And it's Inside Out 2. If you guys have not seen Inside Out and Inside Out 2, Pixar has taken the feelings and the emotions of an adolescent and a teenager and created this movie around them. One of those emotions is joy. And here is joy in feeling an obstacle.
I don't even recognize this place anymore. It's light out at 1 in the morning.
I have never been inside so many jars in my life.
And the Riley we knew is gone.
And if Joy can't see that, well, then she's delusional.
Delusional? Of course I'm delusional! Do you know how hard it is to stay positive all the time when all you folks do is complain, complain, complain? Jiminy mother-loving toaster strudel! Do you think I have all the answers? Of course I don't!
Of course I don't. Right? And we feel that. We know what that is like when we are supposed to be merry and we're supposed to have joy in a season, but things happen and we're not quite there. Well, you know what? The Bible actually has something to share about that, right? Time and time again, there is a notion that mourning and sorrow and pain will turn to joy. That there are life happenings, but there is a sense that they'll turn to joy. And so the question is, how can that happen? Right? How can that happen? Because we know those feelings. We know those pains. We know people who get stuck in them. We know people who just kind of dive in and stay there. Well, if we go back to the psychologist and his work on joy, we see that as we remember things that bring us a sense of care and belonging, that we can regain a sense of joy. And so I want to take a minute here and just have you think of 4 things that make you smile. 4 things that make you smile in this season. You see, these four things, and hopefully it's family, hopefully it's people around you, hopefully it's things that help you know that you are cared for and that you belong, and they begin to help us in those moments where we come up against stumbling blocks and roadblocks and obstacles. They help us get a sense that there's more to the story and that we are cared for and we have belonging. And as the journey goes on of the package and the perfect gift, it gets delivered. And sometimes it gets delivered in boxes that don't quite look like what we were hoping. Sometimes it gets delivered and you don't get exactly what you wanted, right? Because I've ordered something and then received the miniature version, which is not helpful at all. But that's not what happens when we look at joy in the Bible, and that we see that joy means a little bit something different as we look at it in the context of the Bible. You see, a beat-up box still has something worth value in it as we see a baby whose dad named him Jesus. Because in that gift, in the gift of Jesus, there is promises that are kept. And in those promises, it means that no matter what is happening in life, there is care that is given. That we are cared for because there is love and forgiveness there for us that give us a hope for tomorrow. It means that we have a sense of belonging to God's family. And so through Jesus and his birth, there is something to be joyful for. And Peter, as he's writing to the church, and he begins to talk about this inexpressible and glorious joy, he says, be filled with it. It's not a feeling for Peter, it's an attitude. It's something that goes beyond just saying and putting on a smile. It's something that's internal, and it's a perspective. A perspective that says, you know what, there is more to my story than just the roadblocks and the obstacles. There is something more to my story where I know that no matter what happens in my life, I am cared for. That no matter what happens in my life, I have a place I belong in God's family. And all of that revolves around this baby boy, Jesus, who grew up to take on the sin of the world, who conquered that through the empty tomb, and now lives on for us to give us a hope and a future to look forward to give us something to be filled with, this joy, this inexpressible and glorious joy. And so as we enter into this season, I think joy gets delivered again and again and again to us as we were reminded through ordering packages, through the people around us, through the things that we receive, that there are places that we are cared for and that places we belong. And so we have a sense of what it means to have joy in our life, an attitude of joy. My hope is that over these next few weeks, you have someone you can share that joy with. That you can take what it means to be a loved and forgiven child of God and share that and bring joy to someone else's life. And in that, we see that joy is delivered again and again and again. Because that joy that Peter talks about isn't just a one and done kind of thing, but it's for all people everywhere. And so who is it in your life who could know a little bit more about the joy you have so that they can be connected into that joy and that joy can be delivered again and again? I hope as you find that person over this week, Amen?